We should always be pragmatic in drafts and allow the board to come to us. But with 19 wide receivers being drafted in the first 3 rounds, you might be prioritizing late round running backs to go with those elite receivers at the top. And if that is the case, here are a few of my favorite targets, including Jaylen Warren. We knew Najee Harris was the worst first round pick in all of fantasy football last year, after he handled 87% of Pittsburgh's backfield touches and 94 of the team's 106 running back targets, and still finished as the RB8 in points per game. And because he busted as a first-round pick last year, drafters are now assuming he's a value in the 4th round. I'm not so sure. Harris's touches per game increased from 16.5 with a foot injury through week 8 to 21.2, and the 8 starts he made alongside Warren after Pittsburgh's bye. But Harris's share of backfield touches actually decreased in the second half from 76% to 70%. The offense just averaged 7.6 more running back touches per game, and Harris scored more touchdowns for it. I question whether Warren will have standalone value since his increased 8 touches per game in that second half stretch were still only the 57th among all running backs. But his ceiling as a top 12 player if Harris were absent for any reason at all, similar to Alexander Mattison behind Dalvin Cook last year, is worth prioritizing in the later rounds. I also want to target Zach Charbonnet, who was a 5-star recruit and the highest ranked recruit on offense among Jim Harbaugh's 2019 Michigan class. Charbonnet eventually transferred to UCLA under Chip Kelly because he was placed in a committee in his final year with the Wolverines. But under Kelly in 2022, Charbonnet averaged 139.4 rushing yards, 36 receiving yards, and more importantly, 4.1 catches per game, which were more than Jahmyr Gibbs averaged per game at Alabama. And that's important because it's the same area where Kenneth Walker struggled last year, earning just 2.5 targets per game, 46th among all running backs, despite finishing 26th in routes run. Charbonnet should open with the 3rd down pass catching role for the Seahawks offense and could earn even more touches ahead of Walker along the way. Tyler Allgeier is another player I want to target, even after the Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson, number 8 overall. The Falcons' 52% run play rate from neutral game script last year was the highest of any offense, and we should expect that to carry over, since this Falcons team at early Vegas sportsbook lines is not favored by more than 3 points in any game and is not an underdog by more than 6.5 points in any contest. If they're just going to play competitive games, then we should expect them to take that same offensive approach this year. And even if Bijan Robinson were to lead Atlanta's backfield in touches, the team's weekly RB2 averaged 10 touches per game last year. Allgeier is also insurance behind Robinson because we already saw his ceiling, averaging 120 yards from scrimmage per game over the last month of the season. And finally, Damien Harris. Bills coach Sean McDermott stated that Josh Allen's rushing is, quote, never going to go completely away, but it has to get where it's workable. And even Allen himself came out and confirmed he has to transition from being a football player first and quarterback second to QB first and football player second after his elbow injury compromised Buffalo's offense and season in the second half. And I believe them. And if that does happen in Buffalo, the goal line role would fall to Damien Harris, who is only 1 year removed from scoring 15 rushing touchdowns, rather than James Cook, who didn't even receive a single carry inside the 5-yard line last year. Cook also played 13 games without Zach Moss and alongside Devin Singletary to finish the season, and it was Singletary who outtouched Cook in 10 of them. I'm more inclined to target Harris in the standard and half PPR leagues where we don't have to worry about his presence in the passing game, especially since there's an outside chance he leads the league in rushing touchdowns. And remember, be a little bit kinder than what's required.